Good afternoon and welcome to Masterpiece today. I want to welcome each one of you that are joining us through live stream, and I am so happy that you are here. Looking forward to the time when we can meet together, but until then we're continuing with doing videos for you, so I hope that you can join us today. I have a little worship thought before we get started. As I was painting our painting this week, I was listening to music, and I listened to a lot of contemporary Christian music, and I came across this song that while I was painting, it just seemed like the perfect song for the perfect moment for everything that's been happening in our world. So I'd like to read the, I'm not going to sing it for you, but I would like to read the lyrics for you this afternoon. It is called Peace Be Still. I'm sure that if you listen to 88.3, I'm sure that you have heard this song at some point on the radio, but it's called Peace Be Still. I don't want to be afraid. Every time I face the waves, I don't want to be afraid. Just because I hear the roar, I don't want to fear the storm. Peace be still, say the word and I will, set my feet upon the sea, till I'm dancing in the deep. Oh, peace be still, you are here, so it is well. Even when my eyes can't see, I trust the voice that speaks. I'm not going to be afraid, because these waves are only waves. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to fear the storm. You are greater than its roar. I am not going to fear the storm. I'm not going to fear it all. Peace be still, say the word and I will, set my feet upon the sea, till I'm dancing in the deep. Oh, peace be still, you are here, so it is well. Even when my eyes can't see, I will trust the voice that speaks. Jesus, your peace is going to let faith rise up. Oh, heart believe, let faith rise up in me. And the lyrics continue on, but those words remind me of when Jesus calmed the storm, when he was out on the boat and he fell asleep under, in the bottom of the boat, and the crewmen on the boat were just panicking, and, Jesus woke up and said, peace be still, and the waves calmed. And then the other thought that comes to my mind was whenever Peter was walking out on the water towards Jesus, that applies to both of those scenarios of Jesus calming the water and rescuing Peter from sinking in the waves. Both kind of reminds me of the things that we're going through now, with the things that we've been experiencing with COVID-19, and then with all of the turmoil that our country is in right now, as far as, all the ethical issues that we've been dealing with as a nation. It reminds us that we just need to look to Jesus and to be calm and rely on him and look to him for our comfort and for our peace. And it's just very soothing. And if you listen to this song, the music it's very soothing. And one way that I find peace, which I'm sure that those of you who have been attending Masterpiece for a while have kind of figured out, that nature is one of my soothing things that I really enjoy. Most of our paintings that we do have been nature, but anytime I look to nature, it just, whatever craziness is going on in my life, whether it's looking at birds or going outside and spending time with my dogs or spending time with my chickens, it just kind of soothes the craziness of my life. So it's nice to take those moments and to spend time in nature with Jesus and just soothing those crazy moments in your life. So just my thought for today, something that seems to be very applicable to our lives these days. So if you would join me, I'd like to have a moment of prayer before we get started with our painting today. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your many blessings, for calming the waters of our crazy lives. I pray that you will continue to watch over us, guide over us. Please remind us each and every day that you are with us, even if it's just in the smallest things, that you remind us. Maybe it's looking outside our window and finding a new bird that we have not seen before in our yard, or maybe calling a friend on the phone, something to remind us that you are always with us, and it is good for us to take a moment and stop and get rid of all the craziness in our lives at the moment, and remember what you have done for us and that you are always with us. Thank you so much for all your many blessings, and thank you for our talents and for loving us and for taking care of us each and every day. Thank you for your Sabbath day. Amen. All right, so this afternoon we have another flower painting that we are going to do. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We are going to, which I don't think we have done this before, our painting today, we're going to paint a black background. So when I practiced this one, I dumped a bunch of black paint on my plate, and I decided that that was a bad idea because I didn't use half of it. So the black will go very far. So today we're starting with the black. The brushes that you will need, if you checked out the announcement that Mary Ellen put on Facebook, she gave you a list of the things that we need. Hopefully you were able to find all the paints that we are going to be using. We're actually using quite a few, I think 8 of them. Tried to keep it down, but this one, I love the color and I love the black background. So just a review for the brushes that you're going to need. You're going to need a big brush to do the background. And then I also posted on there that you would need, I actually had 4 brushes posted. But our filbert brush, I ended up not using that one whenever I practiced that one. So that one, you can just set that one aside. And I mainly just used the 3 brushes. So if you definitely need the big brush. You need a square brush that has an angular bristle. If you do not have this one, just a square brush would be fine. And then if you have a small round detail brush is good. If you don't have the angular one, I found that I used this one for the leaves, the little detail brush, just outlining the leaves, and then I filled it in with my angular brush. So if you don't have an angular brush, you could probably do all your leaves and everything with the little round brush. It just may take you a little while. The other thing that I forgot to put on the list is if you have white chalk or a white colored pencil, you will probably need that. So you might go find one of those. I wouldn't use a crayon. Don't use a crayon because that won't come off. The pencil, I've never used a white pencil, but it worked really well. It won't wipe off like the chalk does, but it works really well for the, so what I did with it is I outlined my flowers, just drew circles on my canvas so that I had an idea of where I was starting. The other thing that you will need that is different than what we have done before, you're going to need some Q-tips. And when I did my flowers, I started with a whole bunch. I think I put a dozen in there and I rubber banded them together. I found out quickly that you really only need 6 per flower. So just get a handful of Q-tips and a rubber band, and I ended up using both ends, just kind of helping with detail. So grab some Q-tips and a rubber band to help you with the flowers. Otherwise, it might take you a little bit a long time to do your flowers if you don't do it with the Q-tips. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And don't forget your water. We will be changing our water after we do the background. So as your canvas is drying, you can go switch out your water. So I'm going to show you how much. So I put about this much black on my plate. And I didn't go ahead and put any of the other colors on there. I found out that I dumped a whole bunch of paint on my plate and I really wasted a lot of paint. So just dump a little bit, and then if you need some more, then go ahead and put that in. But the black will go really far. And the good thing about the black and the white is you will be able to see where you need to cover. And only one coat. And you will probably need to do the sides as well. I think I have too much water in my brush. So because we're painting the canvas totally black, then you will probably need to do the sides. And as I was painting mine, I got all 3 sides except for the bottom. And then once I dried my canvas, I flipped it over before I started the flowers and painted the bottom, and then just started on the flowers. So my bottom actually became a top. So go ahead and, you know, cover your whole canvas with the black. If you need to add some more, feel free to do so. And just go, looks like, I'm going to clean my brush off. I think I have too much water because I always get my paintbrush a little damp before I get started, just to soften up the bristles, but I didn't get as much water off as I should have. Okay, so don't forget your paper towels. You're going to need those to sop up water, or if you have an old work towel or something, then grab that, because you're going to need it to clean off your paintbrush, help you take some of that water off. Okay, that's much better. So you want to make sure that you cover your canvas to where it is totally, totally black. Don't want to see any white spots through. We're not going to do any kind of color in the black. I mean, now if you wanted to, you could get creative and do that, but I'm just going with solid black. So this one's a little bit different than what we normally do. I think we've had various backgrounds, but I don't think we've ever done a black one. So try to keep it off of your table wherever you're painting. If you do happen to get it on your table, any of your paints on your table or anything, be sure to wipe it off right away, and it should just wipe right off. They do sell at craft stores, I think I've seen them. They do sell black canvases, but I've never used them, so I don't know how well they would have worked with this. It probably would have saved us a step, but that was an afterthought, and I didn't really have time to go look for one this week, so we're just painting the white one black. Which sometimes painting the whole background, even though it's white, just gives a good primer for the canvas anyway. So let's see, I need to add some more. Didn't get quite enough, so going to add some more black. So this should be the only black that you're using, and you definitely, since we are using black, you definitely want to make sure that your canvas is totally dry before you start with your flowers. And if you can't paint with us live today, but you are still watching just to see what we're doing before you actually paint it, then you should be able to go out and find the colors that you need, unless you have them at home. You could probably even do a watercolor one if you only had watercolor paints at home. I think most craft stores are open now. I haven't checked the Michaels in Burleson, but I'm not sure. But these videos are all, you can always find them on YouTube. After the live viewing, they stay on YouTube, on the church's YouTube channel. So if you're watching live but don't have the supplies but still want to try it sometime, then just save the link if you're on YouTube. So just make sure you get your whole canvas covered. Usually the black paint is pretty thick, but this one doesn't seem to be, so I don't have to, because sometimes you have to add a little bit of water to get the black to flow pretty good, but this one seems to be okay. So, okay, so I got the whole canvas covered. Now I'm gonna go, I got my top done. I need to go do my sides. So you wouldn't have to do the sides if you plan on framing it, but I don't think I've ever framed any of my paintings. I've just put them on the wall. I kind of rotate them out because I have so many now. But this one you definitely want to make sure that you cover the sides, because it would look odd if you left the sides white and everything else, the background is black. So just cover the whole thing. Well, obviously you don't have to do the back, but because you'll never see that. So just get your top and your two sides, and we'll come back and do the bottom. Okay, so I'm actually going to, let's see, how am I going to do this? I'm going to flip, no, that's not going to work. I'm going to move over to the other side to paint my other side. Don't want to get too awkward. Okay, hopefully I have enough paint on my brush to finish up because I don't want to add any more. Okay, let's see. Okay, so we have the whole canvas covered. You should be able to tell right away how well you've done at covering. You might have to add a little bit more paint on your plate just to get the bottom, but I wouldn't add a whole lot. Okay, so now that we have the whole canvas covered, we, like I said, want to make sure that we get it all dry before we do our flowers. Make sure, okay, so when you rinse off your brush, pretend like you are painting the bottom of the cup and just kind of move your brush around. The black can be hard to get out of all the bristles. If you have trouble getting it out when you're swirling it around in your cup and trying to paint the bottom of your cup with the bristles, soap works really well to help get those dark colors out. And you can take your paintbrush over to your sink and just put some mild hand soap on them. And I don't think I've ever shared that with you guys before, but if you just take, usually I put the soap right on my fingers and I just kind of swirl my paintbrush around and work that soap into my bristles, and that helps take the dark paint out of your bristles so that you don't transfer that to another color. I actually had, when I was practicing my painting, I used one of my brushes and it bled the blue, because I used the brush to mix the blue, different colors, different shades of blue, and it came through on the yellow. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. So make sure you wash your brush off really good and then get your excess water off, and then you're done with it. So now as your canvas is drying, now would be a good time to go switch your water and, maybe clean out your brush really good before next time you use it. But we are done with this one. So we're done with our big brush. So I'm going to dry my canvas using my hair dryer again. So if you need to speed up your time just a little bit, then get your hairbrush or your hair dryer out and dry your canvas off. And we will take a short break to do that. Okay. So now that your canvas is dry, you should not see any shiny spots, and you'll be able to tell because the black, you go from a really shiny color to kind of dull. So that means that your paint is dry. If you need to go back and maybe some of the areas where if you got your paint brush too thin. If you need to go back and you missed a couple of spots, once it dries, you should be able to tell that. So I went ahead and flipped my canvas over. This was my bottom and this was my top. So I'm going to flip this over now. And I'm actually going to paint this one, and then I'll start on my flowers, and I'm not going to worry about drying this up here because as I'm doing my flower, because then I'm totally done with the black. So I actually maybe shouldn't clean out that brush just yet. Kind of did that backwards, and maybe I'm gonna switch out from my black water to my clean water again. So go ahead and do the top. It's okay if you cleaned out your brush and you didn't in between, because you won't have as much of the black paint on your brush whenever you go back. So it's okay if you cleaned it really good. So just make sure that you rinse it out again really good before you store it away for next time. And just get the top, make sure you get your rounded edges too as you're doing your edges. And I didn't put that much paint back on my plate. I had run out, but I didn't add that much, maybe just a tiny squirt compared to what we normally do or put on our plate. Okay. So that is it for that one. Okay. May have to. I flicked a little piece or a little spot of wet paint on there, but it should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush again. And now we're completely done with that big brush. Completely done. So drying that off really good. Switching out my water since I don't have a sink handy. Okay, so the next thing that you are going to need is, as I dry off my brush here, the next thing you're going to need is either that white piece of chalk, if you have chalk at home, or your white colored pencil. Reminder, do not use a crayon because the crayon is wax and it's not going to allow you to cover those markings up. Okay, so we have 3 flowers. They kind of remind me of hydrangeas, but I really honestly don't know what kind of flowers I painted, but it turned out really nice. So we have 3 different flowers. We have a big one, big blue one in the background, and then an orange one and a yellow one kind of side by side. So the yellow one, I'm going to draw that one in first. So let's see, I kind of need to hold my canvas so I kind of center it. So I'm going to go about midway on my canvas and just lightly draw a smaller circle. Now, as I painted these, my flowers got just a little bit bigger. So that's okay. If you draw it small, then we're just looking for placement on our canvas. If you draw it small, then you can always add to that. And it's very, very light. I did not press down really hard on my canvas with the pencil because I only need a light marking, and it is not going to show in the paint. Okay, so to draw the orange one, I'm not drawing a complete circle on this one. So, and if they turn out kind of oval shape, it's okay because you can fix that when you paint. Okay, so I've got the yellow one right here and then an orange one just slightly bigger off to the side. And then we're going to do our blue one. Sometimes I have to draw both directions and have them meet. So there's about where my blue one's going to go. So that one's kind of hiding in the back. Like I said, if they look a little small, it's okay because as you add, they will grow a little bit bigger. And I just stuck my finger in the black paint. Okay. So yeah, be careful if you pick up your canvas. Don't touch the wet part that you just painted. Otherwise, you're going to get black all over your fingers. Okay, So the colors, we're going to go from dark to light. So the blue one is actually the one that we are going to start with. And then, so I went blue, then orange, and then yellow, and then we did the leaves and the stems for the flowers at the very end. So you are going to need blue. Now, when I practiced this, I thought I was going to need a darker blue to kind of go around the top of the two flowers that it's overlapping. But I found that when I added just a little bit of black to my blue, it was too dark because we have a black background and it didn't show up very well. So we're going with, now the blue that I have, and you don't need a container this big, this is just what I had out of our painting supplies. This is bright blue, and this just does just fine. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take a little bit of this, and we don't really need a huge amount. And I recommend that if you use a big bottle like this, if you had a smaller squirt bottle or something to put it into, that would be most helpful. These tend to have foil on the top, and I just took part of the foil off, but they kind of make a mess. And they're really tricky to pour too without making a huge mess. So I'm gonna have some extra paper towels. So this might be where you need your extra paper towels. If you want to, you can just open the whole thing and use a spoon to spoon it out if you want. Okay, so I'm gonna pour just a little bit on my plate, and probably about that much is good. And it will drip. I just used my finger and put it back in there. Your fingers wash, so we'll just put that back in there. And you shouldn't need more than what I just poured on there. And just wipe your finger off. It will come off. Use soap and water. Okay. And if you need to, wipe off your bottle on the outside so that that doesn't stay messy and get all over you later. Okay, the other thing that you are going to need is white paint. So these are the better paint bottles to go with, something with a little lid like this. But sometimes we buy the big ones because we use so much for Masterpiece. But we've learned to save these bottles and use the big bottle to pour into. Okay, so I'm not putting a huge amount of white on there because I found that I do not want to dip. When I was practicing this, I did quite a bit of the white paint on my plate and then used it for the orange and the yellow, but I found that that was not a good idea. So just do a little bit of the white for this time, and then we'll just do white with every other color that we use. Okay, so here's where maybe extra Q-tips might work a little bit better than using a paintbrush to mix. So what I'm going to do is use about maybe half of this or maybe a third of this blue, and I'm going to take some of this white, and I'm just going to kind of push it off to the side, but not into the white. I'm going to make a lighter blue. So put some white in there, mix it around with these Q-tips actually work pretty good for stirring and mixing the paint. So you might have to add quite a bit. Sometimes it takes quite a bit it takes more white to lighten a paint than it does to darken with black. Black usually goes a long ways, but sometimes to lighten the paint, you have to, oh, don't do that. You have to put quite a bit of white in there. So I'm leaving a section of the white available to do some of the detail work on top of the flower. So when you get it to about where you want it, as light as you think you want it, now you can go as light and dark as you want. So the Q-tips that I use to stir with, I have a paper towel behind my canvas that I just put those on top of. Or if you have a little trash can, grab a little trash can and put it next to you while you're painting and throw your trash in there, because with all these Q-tips that we're using, you're going to generate a lot of trash. Okay, so you see that I have the darker blue, a little bit lighter blue, and then some white. So I'm going to go ahead and I pre-rubber band my Q-tips. So About 6 of them seem to work. You may feel like you're not getting very far, but it's way better than trying to manage 12 on there. So when you rubber band them together, kind of make sure, once you rubber band them, kind of make sure that the tips are even. So maybe go on either side and, push them down to where they look like they're about even. All right. So we're going to start with the darker blue. And we're just going to kind of dab it in there. If you leave some black space in between, that is fine. So if you get pretty close to those marks, if you go over them, the white pencil marks that you made, that is fine. So I'm just going along the bottom of this flower that's next to the orange and the yellow one. And there's some areas where you may not get as much paint, but that is okay, because these flowers, I mean, they kind of also remind me of, trying to paint dandelions, the ones that you blow on after the flower blooms and then as it spreads the seeds. So you can go about there with the darker blue, and then so I'm going to go and pick up some of that lighter blue that we made. And so you don't have to press really hard. You can do, especially if you're looking for a little bit more of that black to come through, and you can kind of make that lighter color bleed into the darker color. Looks like I accidentally picked up some white, but that is totally fine. So I ended up going back and doing just a little bit of touch up before I finished my painting, but it all depends on how you do. Usually the first one takes me longer than the second one, because the second one I kind of already know what I did. And actually, I think I'm going to go a little bit more with the blue up here, the light blue, so that I'm not doing, and I'm not changing my Q-tips in between colors. So I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of the dark blue to maybe give a little bit of darker color in here, and I just did it maybe on a couple of the Q-tips. So just go to the edge of your blue paint and get a couple of the Q-tips in the dark blue paint. It kind of gives it a little bit more color variation. Then when we do the white, we'll do the same thing and add some white in there. So kind of gives you a different, this is kind of your blending with Q-tips. Oh, okay. So I did most of the flower here with the lighter blue. Now I'm going to, not even switching ends, I'm going to dip into the white. So this is why you do not want to keep using the same white with the other colors, because you're going to pick up some of that blue in the other colors, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so it's not pure white that we're doing right now. So we're just adding some white to what we have already. So it's actually making kind of a lighter blue. Now if you pick up some more of the white, right when you pick up that white, you're going to get more white coming off onto your canvas than once you use all that up. So you can kind of go on the top of the flower. Now if you wanted to add a little bit more, you could put, as you've used your white on here, you've still got a little bit of white, so you can kind of add some little white highlights here and there, or lighter. And kind of give it a little bit of color variation there. Okay, now if you want to add, just a few areas where you're really, really white, flip your Q-tips over and to the other end. Sometimes you may have to move the cotton down because once you're grabbing on it, the cotton kind of spreads out and the Q-tips kind of blend together. So I'm pushing that cotton down because they no longer it just turns into a big cotton ball pretty much. So, okay, so I'm going to pick up some white on that end and maybe add some really bright white over the top of that flower. Then I think I'm going to call that one good. Like I said, usually the second time around, do a better job. Okay, and I think that's about all I'm going to do with that one. If you want to make the flower bigger, feel free to do so. You can just keep dabbing, you know, just kind of look at it and make sure that you're kind of sort of symmetrical. And I'm done with that one. So I'm going to take my rubber band off because I'm going to use that one, use it again. So dispose of your Q-tips. You're not going to use those again. We'll just have another round of them. Okay, so if you notice, I did get a lot of blue on there that I didn't use. So try to go less than that. All right, so let's go to, well, actually, before we go to the orange one, we need to dry, make sure the blue one is dry because we're kind of overlapping these flowers. So if you start painting your orange flower while the blue one's still wet, you're going to pick up blue. So let's dry, let's make sure we dry our flower before we move on to the next one. Okay, so now that we are done drying, the main thing is you want to make sure that you dry right around the bottom edge. Now I actually have an area where this didn't finish drying. So I'm going to take some of that excess paint off. You can you can do that with your finger if you want, or get another little just a clean Q-tip and kind of dab that off. Actually, just looking at my flower, when I pulled it off my easel, it looked a little lopsided. So I went ahead and fixed this side because it looked like it was missing part of it, the flower. So we are ready to do the orange. So you actually need, I put on the list that we needed an orange, and you can do a bright orange. This one happens to be pumpkin orange, but any bright orange will work. Now I did also list red, and you might say, well, I don't see any red on the painting that you already did. But what I used the red for was I just used 2 drops of red to darken the orange. So, and that was all I used it for. And you need your white again. So we're not dipping from the white. If you had excess white on your plate from the blue, do not use that one. So I'm going to go to, and this one is very messy as far as plates, so you might want to make sure that you have multiple plates. And I just put my second one underneath here, and you will need another one because I ended up using a second plate just for the leaves because I made so many color blobs on the first plate that there was no room for the green for the leaves and the stems. So make sure you shake up your paint pretty good. I'm not going to do like really shaking. Okay, so this one is another big one that we have. So I'm going to try to aim for less paint than that on the plate. So I need to put this down. Okay, that's about where I need to quit. Okay, again, if you have the little bottles that have the little holes in the top, like the little flip caps, that is so much easier than these big ones. But like I said, we use the big ones for masterpiece when we're all together because we use so much paint. Okay. So yes, I discovered when I practiced this one that I got very messy. I was just as messy when I practiced, so it's okay because it all washes off, just a reminder. Okay, so I'm going to take another Q-tip to mix with. If you have some Q-tips that have a little bit too much cotton on there, you can maybe pull it off or just push it down on the end and just twist it on there, because that doesn't help when you're trying to mix or you're trying to dab some paint on there. So just twist it around to where it kind of subsides a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to actually, I think I'm just gonna add the red to this side and then put the white over here on my plate so that I can kind of make a lighter, kind of mix the middle color orange with the white if I need to. I don't think I'm going to do that this time. I did it when I practiced it, but I found that I didn't really need to do that. So I'm going to just take, and I only need 2 drops. So I'm going to put 2 drops right at the edge of that orange. And that's should be all the orange or all the red that you need. So mixing with another Q-tip. You can see I made it just a little bit. Now if you want it just a little bit darker, you can, but as you noticed, we didn't use a huge amount of the dark blue down at the bottom of that blue flower. So I think I will add just 1 more drop of the red just to make that a little bit more darker red. You don't want to use black because you might turn it, it's not a good idea. Might turn it brown or really, really dark. So red's the better option to go when you want to make your orange darker. So we kind of have a reddish orange right there. You can see that on my plate. Like I said, if you want it darker than that, feel free. Okay, just twist if you want to twist your Q-tip on the edge of your plate. I was going to say paintbrush, but it's not a paintbrush. Just to get some of that excess off. All right, so I'm going to add my white. This white top is very chunky. All right, so add a little bit of white. And then get another bunch of Q-tips. So get 6 of them again and rubber band them together, and make sure your ends are good. Kind of push down the extra cotton that sticks up as you touch them, because they kind of come out. So just push that down, and you are ready to do your orange one. Okay, so going with the dark orange first. Kind of look at your Q-tips and see how much you got them coated. May have to, kind of bunch them together. I think they kind of separated a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to put my dark orange here along the yellow one. And it may not look too dark on your canvas because of the dark background, but you should be able to tell a difference once you get that other color on there. If you go into the blue a little bit, it's okay. You can maybe do 1/3 of that flower. Kind of go out to the edges a little bit. Like I said, you don't need a huge amount. Okay, I think that's good. That's what I'm going to go with. All right. So not even switching ends. I'm going to switch to the main orange. So that was the one that I didn't do any mixing whatsoever. So as you can see, it is a little bit brighter. So I picked up quite a bit of that one. You can do kind of like what you did with the blue flower. Go to almost the end. So we're going to put the white, the lighter end of our flower over here on this side instead of at the top. All right, need to pick this up to make sure that I'm kind of making my flower circular here. Okay, now obviously I went past the lines. You can see my colored pencil line is over here. So I went, you know, about ½ inch past that. Okay, so if you need to add a little bit of the darker stuff in here, you can, but it may not show up. So if you wanted to, you could probably take just a tiny bit of red and, you know, make some more of that darker orange. Or you could add the red in there if you wanted to, just a little bit. I wouldn't do a huge amount. Okay, not even cleaning off my Q-tips. We're going for the white. So that is going to mix, kind of make a really light orange. And you can make one area that is quite a bit lighter. Go into that blue, just make sure again that your blue is dry, because otherwise you're going to have a blue and orange mixture, and I don't think you want that. And kind of go into, you know, I don't have much white left on my Q-tips, so I can go into the darker oranges a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pick this up and look at the shape of that flower. Because sometimes when you paint off to the side, which you guys know, when we're together in Masterpiece, sometimes I stand in front of the canvas, but I don't want to do that on camera. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now, before I move to the yellow one, see, the flowers go pretty quick with the Q-tips. If you did this with a paintbrush, just one single paintbrush with your little round one, oh my word, it would take you a long time to fill those flowers in. So doing it with the Q-tips is a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and pick up some of the orange, kind of dab it off. I don't want a huge amount of the orange, and I'm going to add some of that orange color that didn't get mixed in, and just, you know, because when you have the white on there, you may get a little bit too white in there. So if you want to pick up some of the unmixed orange and just add some of that color back in. Now, I'll try not to do too much. I think I got a little too much. So I'm going to go back, and here's where it's trial and error. So just get some white and I try to dab it off a little bit, so I'm not just like blanketing it with white, because there we go. I think that's about what I want to do with that orange one. So we will call that one good. And it looks pretty symmetrical if you have been around me enough. In Masterpiece, I do like symmetry. That's probably the analytical mind that I have. So we're done with the orange one. So I kind of like things to be symmetrical, so I try to make everything as round as I can. All right. So I have this much left on my plate. I'm not going to switch. I kind of do still have quite a bit of paint on my plate, but we're done with that. But all those colors. Keep your white out. We're going to switch to the yellow. And actually, I took some of the leftover orange when I was practicing this. I took some of the leftover orange that I had and mixed that with the yellow. If you have brown, which I did not have brown at home, you could do that too. But I'm going to do a different shade in the yellow, the darker shade, with orange. So like I said, if you have brown at home, then you can do that. I just didn't have that in my bucket of supplies, paint supplies at home. So I did not have a chance to go grab more from the annex either, so I went with orange and it worked just fine. So get another 6 Q-tips, rubber band them together because it's easier to for the rubber band to keep them together than you trying to have your fingers. If you have problems holding on to little things with your fingers, sometimes the rubber bands will help. So make sure your Q-tips are even. Push down that cotton, that extra cotton, and those should be ready. So 6 of those. All right, so I'm going to put my yellow on my plate. And I probably could use the same white from my orange. Do not use white from the blue, but I'm going to add just a little bit of white there. All right, another Q-tip to do some mixing. All right, so I'm going to take some of this orange. And if you are mixing the orange in with your yellow, then put your yellow close to the orange. So we'll mix that in. And if it's too orange, which would be okay because sometimes the yellow shade does look a little bit orange. Then just don't use a whole lot of it if you're not sure. Actually, I used quite a bit of the yellow that I dumped on my plate to lighten up that orange. So maybe don't put a whole bunch of orange in there. But I think I'm going to go with that because it's enough. It's light enough. And I just won't use that much. And I think if I remember when I practiced the painting, I didn't use as much of that color that I mixed. So it should be fine. And if you don't like it, you can always cover it with the regular orange. Okay. So here we go with the yellow one. Then we should be done with all the flowers. We'll make sure everything's dry before we start the leaves because we don't want to pull any of the color off of the yellow and the orange flowers into the leaves. So we will dry when we get done. Okay, so I'm going with this darker color that I made. Like I said, I probably won't use a whole lot of it. We'll see what it looks like on the canvas. Okay, so I think I'm going to make the darker one over here on this side. I'm going to make the white of the yellow flower come up here. So we'll go right here with the darker yellowish orange color. And obviously, again, I'm going past the lines that I drew, which is fine. This is actually not too bad. You never know until you put it on the canvas, see what it looks like. Because it's not exactly orange, but it's not exactly yellow. So make sure I'm kind of symmetrical here. So I'm going to go with that. Okay, now I'm going to pick up just my regular yellow that I have on my plate and go for that. Actually turns out pretty nice. Like I said, brown would work fine too, but I'd just be careful using brown. Sometimes you can get it too dark and murky, kind of like using too much black. So I'm going to go almost all the way over here. Okay. Look at how much I move over into the orange. All right, now I'm going to pick up the white. So I actually didn't need to add any more white to my plate. It's a good thing paint is not that expensive, because I probably wasted quite a bit this time on this one. So try not to try not to waste as much as I did. Okay, so you don't want to go too far into the blue flower because you don't want to really, oh boy, don't want to really cover that up. I got a little oval flower, so we're gonna have to fix that because I'm not liking it. All right, let's see. Sorry, I have to move this to where I can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to go out this way to kind of fix that. So I need to dip into my darker color. And okay, I'm not going to go any, I'm going to flip my Q-tips over. If you don't want to flip your Q-tips over because you don't want to get your hand all messy, then just grab another 6 Q-tips and start over with clean ones. So let's see. Does that look good? There we go. And add some more of that regular yellow right here. I think I need to add a little bit more to my plate. One thing, if you don't have enough, when you're painting with these Q-tips, if you don't have enough paint on your plate, then it'll be hard for you to pick the color up with your Q-tips. So I guess that was one of the reasons why I dumped so much on there without even really knowing why I did that. Okay. So just adding a little bit more yellow in there and covering up some of that white. All right, I think, let's see, do I look pretty symmetrical? Yes. So I have achieved the look I was going for. If you need to round off some of those scraggly edges, that's what happens down here. You get pieces of the Q-tip coming out, but that should be fine. And let's see. I need to put some more just bold white in there, not a whole lot. And we'll call that good for the yellow one. All right, so you are done. We are done with the Q-tips. We're done with the messy part. So obviously we're not cleaning those off, we're just throwing them away. So there's my discard pile. All right, so I'm going to take a short moment to dry my canvas. So make sure that before we start on any of the stems or anything, that your canvas is, your flowers are totally dry, especially these right here. This one should be dry by now because after we've done these two, the blue should be dry, but that's not where we're putting our leaves. So we will take a short break and switch out plates. So if you need another plate, go grab that. And we will get back to finishing up our painting. Okay, so now that you have your flowers dry, and I was mainly looking for making sure that everything was dry around the bottom of these two flowers. So we have 2 colors of green that we're going to use. We have a grass green, which is a darker one. We're not making this any darker. If we make it too dark, if we add any kind of any black into it, then you're really, with the black background, you're really not going to see this show up. So this, with the painting that I did previously, this green shows up just fine on the canvas. And then we're also using a lighter green. It can be, this is called apple tart. Both good colors. Just any kind of lighter green. It doesn't have to be this light if you don't want, but it gives a good contrast. So if you want to choose a different green, that's fine. Okay, so I discovered we didn't really need a whole bunch of either one of these either. So the two brushes that we're going to use is the little round brush that our detail brush that we use a lot, and then the angular brush. So I used the detail brush to outline everything and kind of get the shape of the flower, or the leaves, I'm sorry. It went through an awkward, the leaves and stems and everything kind of went through an awkward stage where I thought, man, those are really not going to turn out looking lovely on my canvas. But once I filled them in, they look just fine. So I have a clean plate, and I'm not putting that much paint on the plate, so I only have about that much of each color. The rest of the plate I kind of used to clean off my brush as I was going in between the two different colors, and I never washed my brush off in between. I just wipe my brush, the excess paint off on the plate because I had plenty of room, and then I just continued on. So make sure this is where we're going to use our fresh water again, so don't use the black water if you didn't dump that out. Okay, so I'm going to get my little round brush a little damp so that it dries out the bristles and kind of dry that off a little bit. We discovered that when I started on the background, I had the bristles on my big brush too wet and it didn't cover very well. So I'm going to start, so my stems for my flowers, I used the darker green. Looks like I may have sloshed some paint on my black as I was doing my flowers, but I'm not going to do anything about it. If you happen to slosh paint in areas that you don't want, then you can always cover it up with the black or wait and see what happens with your leaves and your stems. That may cover it up, or you just leave it. Okay, so we're going to do our stems first, and I'm just outlining. So we actually have 3 stems that I'm going to put on here for the flowers. The one for the blue flower is just going to kind of look awkward, but once you tie everything, once you get the leaves in there, tie everything together, it doesn't look that bad. So we're going to go kind of curve this one down here. And I'm not really filling anything in or kind of doing any kind of detail, making sure the colors are there, just because I want to outline. So we're going to make this one go this way as well. And then I'm going to put an awkward one in here that looks strange. I'm not going to go all the way down to the bottom because I'm going to have leaves going here, there, and everywhere. Okay, so those are my stems. So I'm not filling anything in. I'm going to just start drawing in my leaves with my little brush, and then we'll just start filling stuff in. Now, if you want to, as you outline, if you want to fill in those leaves before you move on to the next leaf, then feel free to do so. I'm just going to outline everything, starting with the dark color first, and then I'm going to go fill in everything. Okay, so I have, let's see, I've got, so going from this stem right here on the yellow flower, I've got a big leaf kind of coming out here. And with the little brush, do not press very hard. If you need to get more paint on there to get it to flow, then get some more paint. Okay, so going from here, I'm just going to kind of make the bottom of that leaf. Now, if you notice, I covered up the full stem for the orange flower, so that's quite all right. All right, so there's one of my big leaves, dark one. Okay, so let's go for another one right here. So this time I started at the top of the leaf and kind of made it curve down. And let's see. So kind of like that. You can make them any shape. So I don't like the way that one comes down right there, so I'm going to move that up here. So it's okay that you have, if you're not liking the shape, you're going to cover that up anyway. It's okay. All right, so if you want to, before you move to the lighter leaves, you can fill those in so that you kind of know where you are. I'm going to go ahead and go with the lighter ones and just kind of do those. So I'm going to clean off my brush on my plate. I'm not even going to clean it off in the water. So I just painted my plate until there's no more of the dark green. Then pick up the light green. Just a little bit of that. So, all right, so we have a leaf coming up from here. It's kind of a little scraggly leaf. Kind of up through the middle of the big ones that you just put on there. Okay, so we got that. I didn't go quite as high as my other one, but my obviously first painting and second painting are different. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 scraggly leaves down here. So all of the lighter ones are scraggly leaves. Okay, so we're going to go. So these are thinner leaves, so I'm going to do one right there. And you can kind of shape them as you're filling them in. So I have one there. And then maybe I have a smaller one coming out over here. Obviously my second painting is different than my first one, but they're pretty close. So that one, we're going to end up covering, all this down here. So we've got those 2 over there. And we've got 3 over here. So let's see what we can do over here. So we're going to put a shorter one. Yes, I did. Okay, so we've got a shorter one here. Kind of looks weird, but we'll fix that as we fill it in. Like I said, it goes through an awkward phase. When I need a little bit more paint. It goes through an awkward phase before we start filling stuff in. It just looks crazy. Looks like a bunch of seaweed down here, actually. So let's see, we're gonna go with the large one over here. So we're just kind of filling in I don't like the way that dipped right there. We're just kind of filling in the black area, the bottom here to kind of, make sure we have enough leaves and stems for 3 flowers. So this one, we're just going to kind of follow the line that we drew on the one side. Sometimes it's kind of hard for me to do leaves and make one side look like the other, but it just takes practice. And like I said, with the doing it with the small brush kind of helps, because then as you're filling it in, you can kind of, if you don't like something, you can kind of fix it as you're filling it in. So that's kind of nice. If you wanted to, you could take the white pencil and pencil all that in and then just go back over it if you want to. You do that as well. I prefer, since I'm painting it anyway, I might as well just paint the outline the same color that I'm going to do the leaves. So you can do whatever is easiest for you. Okay, so we've got another leaf coming up over here. And that one, just a simple little leaf. And I think that's about what I'm going to do for my leaves. So I don't think I'm going to add any more. Kind of make that tip a little bit more pointed. Okay, so we're ready to, I'm going to clean that one off. I'm actually going to clean this brush because I'm not going to use it again. So I'm getting the excess paint off on my plate before I clean it off in my water. So again, as you're cleaning off your paintbrush, try to paint the bottom of your cup and then dry it off with a paper towel or a rag, whatever you have. Okay, then I'm done with that one. Now, if you need to go back and use that one for any reason, feel free to do so. It's just, I figured out that my angular brush, which you may have to, if you don't have the angular brush, then you may have to use that round one to kind of help you do a little detail work. Because just the flat square one might not do what you want it to do. I really like the angular brush because you can kind of do a lot of detail work with it. If you turn it, you can paint this way where it's flat on the canvas, or you can turn it sideways and really do some detail work in there and still have a fairly, thick brush this way in width. Okay, so make sure that it's dried off. You don't have a whole bunch of water on it. Test it on your finger and see how wet it is. We're going to do the dark first. So go and pick up some dark green. And let's just go ahead and start filling in the leaves. Now, I did find that with the green, doing it on the black canvas was a little bit better than doing it on the white, but you still probably need to do another coat. So let's go and fill in all the dark stuff, and then we'll do the light green, and then we'll go back, and by the time we get the lighter green filled in, then we should be able to go back to the dark green and do another coat. So you can turn your brush sideways. You see I'm kind of going flat in the middle of the leaf, but then I'm also turning it sideways to do the detail work around the edge of the leaf. And I'm going to make sure that the rounded part of the canvas is covered with the green as well. Okay. And flipping this brush over on the side really helps, especially when you've got color, two different colors next to each other. It really helps. So let's see, before I move to the other side, we're going to go ahead and do our stems. So you see I'm turning it lengthwise, the brush. So I'm kind of filling it in a little bit more. And you probably need to go with that angular tip towards the leaf. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, use your detail brush, because you want to make sure that that stem kind of goes along with your, sits on top of your leaf where it doesn't look odd. Okay, so this is our stem for the blue flower. And got that one. Just moving across the canvas. And here's our yellow stem, our yellow flower stem. Okay, there's that one. And then here's our leaf. See how this green has, as it dries, it gets darker. As with any paint, as it dries, it gets darker, same as if you paint your walls in your house. So you don't want to go too dark with this dark green, otherwise you won't see it very well on the black canvas. So if you're looking for, it's easier to see the colors on a white canvas, but when you change to a black background, it's makes the colors darker when they dry. Okay, so fill that in. All right, so there's the dark leaves. We're done with that. Okay, not washing it off. I'm just cleaning it off on my plate. The edge of the plate works wonders. Just cleaning that off. And we're going for the light green. So let's go fill in the light green. So this angular brush really helps with, putting points on the ends of the leaves. So that's another reason why I like the angular brush. I've used it quite a bit, this painting and the last painting that we did, and I have come to appreciate it a little bit more than what I did before. So you can really do a lot with it. Okay. So just going with a bigger outline on this flower, or this leaf, I'm sorry. Just filling that in. You can get really close to the green leaf. If you happen to bleed through with some of the darker green as you're filling this in, if you didn't get it cleaned off too good, which you probably won't unless you wash it, that is quite all right, because what I did is as I was adding the second coat, I was adding lighter green to the darker green and then putting some darker green in the light green leaves, so that it kind of gave a little color variation in the leaves, because not everything in nature is one color. Even though it may look like it is, it really isn't. Everything kind of blends together in harmony, actually, which makes it really nice. God was really, really creative whenever he created all the things in this world. All right, so there's that one. If you happen to so this one I got, trying to get in next to the green leaf, I got a little bit of light green on the stem, but I'll go back and fix that. I don't really care. Not a big deal. Okay, so now we're doing these over here. Make sure you get those covered. Like I said, you're going to have to do another coat so that it looks good, because I guarantee you will not be happy with the black showing through like it is. If you need to, get your hair dryer out and dry it like what I've done to help speed the drying process. Or if you don't have a hair dryer, stick it in front of a fan or wherever you're painting. If you have a ceiling fan, just lift it up to the ceiling fan to help it dry. Just anything moving the air. Okay, one more, then we'll start covering. We'll make sure our stuff's dry before we put a second coat. So these skinnier leaves, I'm not turning my brush sideways because they're a lot skinnier. So if you turn it sideways, then you might go and put too much color in places that you don't want to. So all right. If you paint too much on there, you're going to just keep pulling the color off. All right, so I got them all filled in. As you're drying, here's where you probably want to put your paintbrush in the water so that it doesn't dry out. You don't want it, so you can rinse it off. And I will take another short break and dry my painting, my leaves, so that we can get these done quicker. All right, so we're ready to finish out our leaves by doing the second coat on them. So I'm going to be color mixing as I fill in, because you should really only need to do a second coat on the leaves, and that's going to be it for once we finish up the second coat on the leaves, we should be done for the afternoon. So doing the same process again, I'm going to start with the dark green, and get the stems and the leaves how I want them, and then we'll finish up with the lighter green. And again, I'm not going to do much rinsing off of my paintbrush in between. So if you get your leaves good and dry, get the paint good and dry before you start the second coat. It shouldn't take more than 2 coats. And if you happen to have an area that actually comes through that's dark, the black canvas, black background showing through, it's okay. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Usually the second coat is usually enough. Okay, so filling in the big leaf. So just picking up the dark green for right now. And just be careful with your swiping. Don't get too carried away, because then you might paint into an area that you don't want to paint into. Because if you're not careful and if you're not coloring inside the lines, then you might end up getting in the black some more, and then you're going to have to go back and fix that. Okay, so I got that leaf covered, and before it dries, I just picked up just a little bit of the light green, and here I'm going to pick some areas where I'm just lightly touching. I'm not doing a whole lot. And if where you first dump that light green off on your leaf, you can, it might be a little too much, but just leave it there. Get some of that extra green, that light green, off of your brush by going to a different area, and just lightly touch your leaf to where you're spreading that light green, and just kind of lighten it up just a little bit. See how I blended where I first deposited the light green? It was pretty drastic, so I got some of the excess light green off of my paintbrush, and then just kind of went back and blended it in. So that's how we're going to do our blending our color variation so that we give some character to our leaves. If you want a little bit more, then just pick up some more of the light green. I wanted a little bit more on the top here, on the tip of the leaf. So I just went and picked up some more light green. And so maybe the sunshine's shining on the top part of that leaf. Okay. So I'm done with that one. Just wiping off my brush on the side of my plate and moving to the next one. So get the next dark leaf going. So put your second coat on that one. Then we'll go back and work on the stems of the flowers, which we don't have to do a whole lot. But I will probably add some of that lighter green to even the stems. So just be careful when you're coming down here to the bottom of your leaves and you're next to the lighter ones. Make sure that you don't get too carried away and actually paint over those lighter ones, because you might be mad at yourself if you do. Okay, so we're good. Picking up some light green, just a little bit for now. So you can see I have just a little bit on both sides, very lightly. And you can kind of do the same thing. You know, if you want the top of your leaf with that color, maybe we have a little bit more. Maybe this one's a little bit lighter than the other one. Okay, so dabbing off excess paint, because I've got enough light green on there that I want. So if you dab off the excess paint, then you're really just blending that light color in. Just like that. And kind of make it go down that way so it looks like the stem comes just from the middle of those two leaves. Maybe just a little bit more. Just like that. Maybe I have a few streaks down here, cleaning off my brush. Just doing a few streaks down there. All right, so, all right, wiping off the brush again. You see how I'm cleaning off my brush on the plate, just going back and forth. So no water. So let's go move to, oh, I forgot to do the stems, but I'll go back and do those. Those won't take long. So let's go back and just finish all the leaves, and then we'll go back and do the stems. Got carried away. These shouldn't be too, for some reason the lighter green covered better than the darker green, which you'd think would be opposite, but anyway. Shouldn't take too much to cover the little ones. Just be careful when you get close to the neighboring leaf that's a different color. And see, I have some of the dark green bleeding off into my light green leaves, but that's okay. So this little leaf down here is a little bit darker in color than the one next to it, which is fine. Okay, so before I finish up these two leaves, what I'm going to do, not cleaning that off, I'm going to dip into the darker green. So kind of going back and forth. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go along the edge of the bottom of those leaves to kind of give a break between the lighter green, since we have more of those leaves. So we're going darker on the bottom. And down here too. Now that may be too dark, but let's clean off our brush. Again, get the excess off. Go back and pick up the light green and kind of lightly blend that darker in, or just go over just the top of where you put that dark green on there. And that should give you, that should soften that dark green a little bit, which on mine it did. So do the same with this one. And that way, see how it broke up these two leaves. It gave them a break on their color since they were close together. All right, good with those. So let's go to this one in here. This one doesn't really, it's kind of by itself, a lighter one by itself. So we may go with darker green down here close to the two dark green leaves that it meets in the stem. And coming up the curved part here. This one kind of looks like a banana. All right, so picked up a little bit of the dark green. I'm going to tap some of that off. I got a little too much. So if ever you get any too much color of the one that you're kind of doing the highlights with, just tap it off on your plate to get some of that off. All right, so we're going to go from the bottom here and kind of use that tip of the angular brush to kind of come up from the bottom here. And we're just going to do a few streaks in there. All right, so really cleaning that off on my plate. Wiping all the excess off, I'm going to go and pick up just the light green to kind of blend that in a little bit. And down here, so it's not so drastic. And it takes practice. If you're a little apprehensive about doing it, just commit and just do it. So I think we're good with that one. And I kind of went into the stem a little bit, but I think I'm going to fix that whenever I go back and do the stem. So let's go ahead and move to the 3 green leaves over here, the light green ones. And then we'll go back and do the stems. That'll be the last thing we do. But since we're not cleaning off the brush really in between each one, then it's okay if I went ahead of myself with the light green color before I finished up the dark green, because I keep going back and forth, so it's all good. And went over into the black a little too much, but that is okay. Okay, got that one. I may have to add some more of the light green on my plate. If some of the darker green comes out of the top of your brush, because I have quite a bit of it just stored away up here by the metal on my brush, but that is fine because it adds in the color even if you're not ready, but it's usually pretty subtle, so it doesn't make that big a difference. Okay, I need to add some more of the light green on my plate, just a little bit, because I only have 1 leaf left to cover. So just a little bit. So I conserved more paint on the green than I did on the other stuff. But like I said, it's a good thing paint is cheap, so we don't have to worry about that. All right, we're almost done with these. We'll go and add some of that dark green to these leaves that we just finished over here, putting the second coat on. All right, had too much of the light green on there, so excess. Just painted my plate. All right, picking up some dark green. Let's see, we're gonna go along the edge of this one, along the bottom. And this is still wet enough, I can just blend it in. And pick up just a tiny bit more. Maybe this one's just a little bit darker. Yeah, I went with a little bit darker on that one, which is good. All right, so this one is going to get some dark around here and all the way across over here. Maybe some down along the whole thing. Okay. Clean off the brush, pick up the light green, and let's see about blending these two colors. And there we go. So some areas that are a little bit darker. I think I'm going to add just a tiny bit of light green up here. All right. And last leaf. So let's see what we can do with that one. So along the curve and all the way over here. So that one has a little bit more. Pick up some light green, kind of blend that in. Not a whole lot. I gave that one enough color variation. There we go. So we're done with those leaves. Let's go back and fix our stems, and then we will be done for today. Okay, so didn't tell you what I did. I just cleaned off my brush a little bit. So I took some of the light green off, and then I'm going back. Now some of it, I did leave quite a bit on there, but took some of that off, and let's go back and do our stems. And then we'll be done. So just kind of make those darker. And this is the one that I had a little bit of the light green bleeding into this stem, so I just fixed that by coloring that with the dark green again, doing the second coat. Okay, so now I picked up just a tiny bit of the light green on just kind of on the tip. I kind of have a mixture here, but I'm just going to go along the side, just right there. And as you go down, you can kind of blend that to give it a different color. So that one is done. Cleaning it off because I have a lot of excess light green on there. Pick up the dark green to do this other stem. Now this is the stem for the blue flower. So get that one. coated pretty good. Just do, when you're painting sideways like this with this brush, just do very lightly, because you don't want to mess up your brush either. And I'll pick up just a little bit of the light green. I don't want to do a huge amount on this one. And just add a little bit in there. Looks like my black canvas is showing through, but I think we're gonna leave that one alone. Drag that color down there. It's kind of, so when you get the background starting to show through, that means that you're dragging the wet paint across a dry canvas, and the more you drag it, it's not adhering to it. So just keep, or you've got, it's just not going on very well. So if you do just a little light pass with the paintbrush, you should be able to get it to stay where that's not showing through, where the background's not showing through very well. Okay, last one, last stem. Or I guess I said that backwards. If you're doing wet on wet, that's when it starts coming through, when it doesn't cover the canvas. You think it's dry, but it's not. And then when you go and add another color on there, or you're putting a second coat on there, then it just pulls the wet paint off again. So it's when it's wet on wet. So if you haven't allowed it to dry enough, and you go and add another coat, then that's where it starts pulling through. The background starts coming through again. So you get frustrated and you think you need to keep adding more paint, but really you need to let it dry and then add more paint. Okay, so picking up the light, got too much of it off. Picking up the light green, and we'll go especially right around this leaf. Since this one sits on top of that leaf, we're going to do a little bit lighter. Okay, so I added in the light green, and I'm going to clean off my paintbrush and just go pick up the dark again, and kind of like what we did with the leaves, and then just blend that in. So do it very lightly so that you don't completely get rid of that color. And that way you have it. So what I did is I made it pretty light right here, even lighter than the highlights that I put on the leaf, so that you could see the distinction between the stem of the flower versus the leaf of the flowers. So I think we are done with that, with all of it actually. If it got all my leaves the way I wanted them. I actually have a little bit of a mess up right there, so I think I'm going to get I'm going to use my little brush, my detail brush, get just a tiny bit of my black paint and cover that up. So if that happens, and I'm actually going to use it off of the top of the lid. If that happens where you put a little bit of green in an area where you went off, like way off of your lines, and you don't want to go back and fix that, just you can fix that with a little bit of black. Cover that up with your detail brush. Don't use any other brush, just use your detail brush. And I think we are good. Okay, make sure your brushes are all cleaned off. So our painting is done for today, and I hope that you enjoyed a little bit different painting that we did this time using the black background. And stay tuned. Unsure about what we're doing for Masterpiece next month. We'll either record, or I don't know if we'll be together in person for next month, but just stay tuned to the Facebook page, the Keene Church's Facebook page, and we will keep you updated with that. But we will let you know. We're aiming for, again, the first Sabbath of the month. We had to switch to second Sabbath of the month, not because of camp meeting, but because of something else that had a little mishap at home. So I was not able to record last week's. So anyways, just stay tuned to our Facebook page, and we will let you know what next month will hold. So I hope to see you again next time. Hope you enjoyed our different painting this month. So post your pictures on either the ladies' Facebook page that Mary Ellen has created, or find the post on the Keene Church's Facebook page. We'd love to see how you guys did. So make sure you take a picture, snap a picture, and share your painting with us. And thank you for joining me today.